And is this a spreadsheet that is continuously living, meaning like we started at the start of the year and it lives on throughout the year and then at the start of a new year?
Yeah,
Okay, similar to that.
something like that, yeah.
So what about, there's a tool called named versions, which allow us to say, hey, basically gives us points to go back to, right? If something screws up.
Right. Someone screws it up and you have to go back to a default.
And we want to go back to a default or a previous save, so to speak, right? Let's talk about that situation. All right, so here's my protected sheet. If someone tries to come and edit this, anything here, they won't be able to, and they'll say, hey, this is a protected area.
But you could.
But I can, and it won't even, not even going to bug me about it. So, pretty cool there. Before I get to version history, questions about protecting sheets. We can also right-click down here and protect the whole sheet if you need to, right? So, questions there, how we can use it. Cool. All right, version history. So we've got a living, breathing document. And let's say we want to make sure that we have a point back to some approved setting, maybe on a weekly basis. What we can do, and this happens with any document, is we can come in here, we can come to File, we can come to Version History, and we can name a current version, or we can see version history, right? So in your situation, when you say name a current version, maybe Monday you go and approve all the changes that were made, right? Maybe changes were made over the weekend or just throughout the week. Whatever your workflow is, whenever it's time to approve those changes, you go in, you take a look, everything looks great. Hurrah. Now we say, all right, we're going to name that as a current version, right? This is our path back to success in case something gets screwed up on Thursday. So I'm going to name version, what's the date?
Today's the 18th.
All right, so May 18th, 2021. I now know May 18th, 2021, this document was good. And then if I come here and see version history, what we probably want to do is show only named versions, right? So here's, and that was a terrible name to give it, by the way, because it's actually quite confusing with their date. So that is my mistake. Notice that this doesn't have a comma, and this does, and it has a timestamp and everything. So my mistake there, but it does give us an idea of what has been done, right? And this document has lived on more than a year, right? Maybe it's lived on for 10 years. This particular document's relatively new, but let's say you want to see some of the changes that I made yesterday. You can actually click in, and it's going to show you who made changes and to what, right? So any of these changes, and it tells you, it gives you a timestamp. You can click on it, and it'll show you what was actually done, right? So total of 4 edits. Here's some of my edits, right? So all these highlighted things are edits that I made, right? And if I want to continue clicking down this, oh look, I put in graphs at some point and took them out, right? So this is going to show the entire version history of the document. So if you've got 25 people that work on this document on a consistent basis, it'll show you every time one of your 25 users comes in and changes something, right? So really robust there. We'll be able to know who's doing what, or maybe something just gets accidentally deleted. We can revert back to a golden copy. Is that going to help you out?
Yes, that will help me out a lot.
Can you just go to one? Instead of going back in time to a golden, can you just take out one change? You know what I'm saying? Is that?
Yeah, it's a good question. So what he's asking is, we know where the mistake was made, but we don't want to go all the way back to
golden
the golden copy.
copy.
We don't have to go back to the golden copy, but if we choose to revert back to, right, so I can revert back to any one of these, right? But the problem is if I revert back to any one of these, I'm going to lose any change that was made after that, right? So in your situation, it is unfortunate, but what we probably want to do is see what changes were made and then manually go and actually make those adjustments on the document ourselves. Because there's no way for Google to just make that one change without, if we think about it with complex formulas happening all over and whatnot, there's just not a great way for them to validate that data is going to act the way we want it to.
You might be able to go to like a previous, so you know the date that's where everything got messed up. You can go into the day after or the whatever current, take away as much data, keep as much data as you can, save that on an extra spreadsheet, and then revert back and then transfer the data back over.
Sounds simple.
The challenge is if a lot of good things happen after,
Pairing.
but you have this space in your timeline there, that there's just all this bad stuff that just happened.
Yeah.
But you want all the good, you can't go back, you can't keep the good without
No, it's true.
getting rid of that.
And it is tough, but it's,
That's okay.
yeah, the bad kind of leads to the good ultimately, and I think it's just going to be tough. But I don't actually hate his idea, right? Like if we've got a golden nugget at the end of the day, but we want to go revalidate some of our data, maybe we do make a copy of like our golden standard now and then revert this current spreadsheet back, grab the data as it was, and then put it into the new copy, and then get rid of the old version entirely, right? I mean, we've created 4 extra steps, but it might be worth it in some cases. And that, to me, is probably going to be the easiest way to do it. So hopefully we're not going back very far when we're looking at our version history. But just so you know, that version history lives on with the document forever. So if the document's 10 years old, you're going to be able to see 10 years worth of changes. It's pretty remarkable. Questions on version history?
Not history, no, it was another random question I had.
I like random questions. Let's do
Okay.
it.
So, at the end of the year, or quarterly, or whatever tax comes around, how well does Google Slides / whatever, Google Sheets transfer over to a TurboTax or the other one that I can't remember?
What kind of document do they need, right? I mean, do they just need a XML, right? A Microsoft Excel document, essentially?
And that's what I looked at was Excel can transfer data into, it's called Intuit, I think. I'm not exactly sure if that's the right
A
name.
lot of times, there's a CSV, which is a generic across a lot of products. It's basically comma separated values, CSV, and it just takes every field and separates it by a comma that can be read in. That's an option you can always export as a CSV and then import.
And maybe show
So,
some
so,
export options.
so that
Yeah.
exporting options do work.
Yeah, exporting options are great. So let's, I'm not going to restore a version right now. Okay, so we're talking about file versions. And that is something that we need to be concerned about with Google. Because there are implications when we share with people that maybe don't use Google. Maybe they don't want it, I don't know, right? There are implications with it. So let's say we need this document and we need to upload it somewhere else. And maybe it's not a major software chain. Most major chains now accept Google Sheets, no problem. But maybe they don't. I'm going to come into File, and I'm going to come to Download. Download is basically our export tool. And here are the formats that I can actually download this file into. So I can do directly into a Microsoft Excel format, right? And it's not perfect, but the formatting is very, very close. Okay, so the majority of the time you're not going to see a difference. If we're doing some really complicated formatting, yeah, you're gonna see a little bit of difference, but nothing that you can't open up Excel and make the changes in 2 seconds, kind of thing, generally speaking.
So when that says download, is that downloading a local copy or is that saving it to your shared drive?
It's a good question. So it says download, and that's very important. It is downloading this document as a local copy. So if you download something, it's not going to automatically be in Google Drive, right? So we need to be cognizant of that. Maybe we're sharing with someone who uses Microsoft Excel, but we want to make sure that we still have that document and a copy of that document. You'll want to share that or put that in with your Google Drive documents and save that somewhere so that we always have it in the cloud and it's always available to us. Right? And then we can actually share it. We can share it as an Excel document from Google Drive as well. Right? So that's a great question though. ODS, I'd be shocked if you use it. PDF, really good. HTML, web page, that you'll probably use that at some point. CSV, everything except CSVs, everything does, because that is the standard. Comma separated values, basically everything's going to have a comma between it. It'll always work, and you'll be able to upload something via CSV, pretty much guaranteed.
And Sheets will bring it in, a CSV into it.
And Sheets will bring a CSV.
It'll look like a spreadsheet again.
Yep. So, and I'll go through that process as well. But yeah, so that's how we kind of export things and what we can do with it. Okay. While I've got file open, do we have any questions? Kind of just as we scroll down here, right? We talked about importing. Let's do an import really quick. I don't know if I have any good data to import. So we can import from my drive, shared drives, shared with me, recent. I'm actually going to skip all this, right? Nothing super interesting, but you can import from another spreadsheet. It's easy. Just basically go grab that data. But if we're talking about a CSV particularly, I'm going to do upload, unless you have a CSV shared in your drive somewhere. I don't think I do. But I'm going to upload it, select from my device. Let's see what I have. All right, so I'm just going to do this failures.csv. All right, so now it's staging it for upload, and then it's going to ask me a couple questions. Import file, all right. Failures.csv, it's going to tell me where it's going to import it. So right now it's going to create a new spreadsheet, insert new sheet. I want to insert a new sheet. I don't want an entire new spreadsheet. I want it to be part of this spreadsheet document. So I'm going to insert a new sheet, but we can also replace the spreadsheet, replace current sheet, whatever we want to do. Append to current sheet, whatever sheet you have open, it'll then put it into that area. And then separator type, this is going to say, hey, are commas what denotes change in our rows and columns? I'm going to say detect automatically, but there are tab, comma, and custom. It's almost always comma. And then I'm going to import the data. So here's our new sheet. That was a CSV. Had nothing in it. It was all just commas. In fact, maybe I can go open a CSV for you, just to prove to you that they are useless. All right. That's what a CSV looks like, right? Not very useful. So that you can upload into this with relative ease. Any questions on uploading documents, anything like that? If we're uploading a Microsoft document, maybe an Excel document or anything like that, we can just drag and drop and put it in Drive and then open it from Drive and it'll open in Sheets here for us, right? So really easy, nothing that we have to worry about there. Okay.
What I'm really getting is basically Microsoft Office requires your annual subscription of $150. So Google Drive, it doesn't require that. So I no longer have to pay the ransomware to Microsoft Office.
Ransomware.
So, I mean, Google Workspace is a paid service by the county here. But yeah, I think we can probably cover most use cases through Google Sheets or through Docs or whatever you need. There are some unique use cases where things are, I don't want to say impossible, but they're so different in how Google accomplishes the tasks that if you have 10 years experience in Excel in setting up like advanced macros, well, Google has a very similar tool set, but they go about it completely different ways, and your 10 years of experience are going to be kind of useless. So you'd probably be better off getting an Excel instead of figuring all this out. But for the rest of us, Sheets is going to have what we need in a pretty similar format.
So a civilian has to pay regular for Google Slides and documents and things like that.
Oh yeah, no, that's a great question. So there are free versions of it, right? So anyone who has Gmail has Drive. They have some free Drive storage. They have free Sheets. They have free. There are more advanced features in your county email than in your free personal use email. But yeah, absolutely, you can use all of these tools for free with just a Gmail account. Okay. Let's see. Are there other questions right off the top of your head? If not, I want to go over kind of some charts and some cool things we can do there. Okay. I'm going to come into, this is a similar data set. It's not the exact same, but, well, it is actually the exact same. I've just doubled it. So it's the same data set twice. Not very useful data, not particularly interesting, but we're going to use it for now. I've got it in a new sheet over here, and I'm just going to highlight my data. And I want to create a chart. And there are lots of ways to create charts. But I want to show you the cheating way of creating a chart. Super easy. You're going to feel like a wizard after you've done this. So I've got my data highlighted. If I come to the bottom right where it says Explore, it's going to look at my data that I have highlighted, and it's going to say, what would be useful for Ryan? What does he normally do, right? What data points is he normally interested? So the more you use this feature, the smarter Google's going to get about knowing what you want. Well, we can actually help along. We can ask questions, right? So I'm going to say, if you notice over here, I've got total sales by rep, just so that I remembered what charts I liked. All right, so I said total sales by rep. I just typed that in. I want to know how many sales there are by each representative. If you'll notice, my first answer, so there's 5 reps apparently, and it's going to give me either a formula or I can choose to create a chart, right? So if I want to see the formula, I can do that here, and I can actually copy and paste this, or I can just drag it in. And that's the formula that's being used to get that information. But that's not cool. I want to see a chart. So I'm going to come back to total sales by rep. Instead of formula, I'm going to choose chart over here. And look at that. It creates a chart for me. And I don't want a pie chart, I want a column chart. And then I'm going to insert the chart. Says it in, oh, there it is. And I must have been clicked down below because it inserted it in a really weird spot, but here we go. My mouse is fighting me right now.
I wish there were a document like we could play around with. I don't have anything on my sheets, so, it would just be more, how do you say, more entertaining, interactive if I had my own
If
document.
that's just a generic, share that with him.
Yep, let's just do this real quick. What is, actually, should we just open it up to everyone and then we can,
Yeah.
yeah, that's great. Sorry, we could have been doing that the whole time. All right, everyone is gonna have editor permissions. No. I lied, not everyone's gonna have editor permissions. I've got it locked down on the domain here. Let me see. Yeah, okay. I'll change that for the next.
Just make a new sheet, can you
Well, so the problem is,
put some data in there?
I'm gonna try that really quick, but I think I've got this set on the domain level so that only. Yeah. It's not gonna let me update this to editor.
I guess in the future, we can, yeah. Cross that bridge when it comes up.
Oh, hey, look at that. Okay, I didn't have it set there. So I wonder why the other one's fussing. All right, so is there a group that I can send this to that everyone will have a link?
Is there a
or-
Box Elder County group?
Very potentially. You would have to tell me the name of it though. Is
Let
it?
me take a look if that's the name.
Just call it like a training file.
Yeah, it's just a demo sheet.
Yeah, Box Elder County, boxelder@boxeldercounty.org. That's pretty much everybody.
Box Elder at Box Elder County. What's
Yes, county.
.org? Oh, look at that. I'm not going to notify everyone. Okay, so that's named the Observian demo sheet now. If you go into, this is where you guys should be able to find it. If you go to shared with me or you're in Drive and you just search Observian demo, hyphen demo, to make things more confusing. You should be able to find it there. And I'm going to actually copy and paste some data into here, just for kicks and giggles.
I'm not sure.
Are we having luck finding it?
No.
Yeah,
Let's see.
You have to spell Observian, right?
Well, I can email the link to everyone, but I don't think.
Observian.
Do you have a list of everyone that's on
yeah.
today's training?
Just
Yeah, Nate, if I send it to you, and we do, is it just Nate?
And Hammer at boxelder.
That's right.
Learning.
There we go. I am going to notify you.
Okay.
So you can find it really quick. All right, so I'm actually going to wait a couple minutes here before we go any deeper while Nate's sharing things. But questions in general? Nothing. We just hate sheets, and that's what it's going to be.
Oh, I'm loving it. It's great.
It's growing on me slowly.
It's a huge change. There's no doubt. Like I said, I started my career in accounting, and it can be daunting.
I think it's just the learning curve. I think because we've all used Excel for so long, like.
Yep.
I use Sheets at home and I use Excel here, so.
That was one of the harder things for me, is I had a mental barrier where I thought, okay, Google Sheets is
Yeah,
not for business, right? Like I had it in my head that it wasn't powerful enough to do the things Excel could do because they give it out for free, right? So I thought, oh, it must be an inferior product. And strangely enough, like even when I was going to school, we never used Google Sheets, which is weird because 60% of higher education now uses Google Sheets, right? So there are now more graduating, seniors from college that used Google Sheets than didn't, but I just wasn't one of them. And so I think I had a mental barrier where it's like, all right, how is this free and still useful?
It does a lot more than I thought it would. Like, I could say I thought it was very limited at first, but the more you learn about it, it's a good product.
Yeah, it's like any tool. The more things, the more rocks you kick up, the more we're going to get out of it. If you'll notice here on the top right, I now have Nathan Hammer in here with me. Right, so we'll talk about that. You guys will actually be able to watch what I'm doing on your screens if you choose to. So you'll be able to see how robust and strong the sharing is and real-time collaboration. It's pretty cool.
To be honest, I wasn't expecting to get much out of this training.
That's fine. It doesn't hurt my feelings. Hopefully you guys get something out of it.
I wasn't expecting much, and I'm like, okay, great, we're gonna go over. But I didn't realize how useful this actually is in my civilian life. So
There you go.
I'm good with it.
That's what we were aiming to do, so I'm glad we got you hooked up there.
So honestly, when you complain about all the phishing tests and the spam tests that we send out, it's gonna benefit you more in your personal life too than it'll benefit your work life.
Yeah, that's true.
Protect
The county's on the hook when you get an email from your county email. You're on the hook at home.
It's true though, it does make you more.
So that's been shared with all of you in here, so if you go to shared with me, you should see that Observian demo sheet.
How do you send out emails like that?
So what I did was, I pulled up the sheet and I hit the share on the right, and I copied everybody's email addresses into the share with who, and there's a little notify button that I left turned on because it was a small group here, and so it sends that out to you.
So like if I wanna do one for the whole entire county, I can do I just do the one that you guys set up?
Yes, you could just do Box Elder County or county employees or.
Box Elder is the one you told me to do. So this group right here, everyone in the organization technically has access, but I did not choose to send a notification email. So if you wanted to, you would just do.
So we also have a distribution group that you're used to using called county employees.
Right,
And you can, I just looked that up and you can use that one also. And that one.
I can, okay.
So you would do county employees and you would say notify people, and then it's gonna let everyone know, hey, come check out your email.
Okay.
But that'll go to every employee that has an email address.
Right, I'm saying like when I'm sending out something like for wellness,
Yeah.
like a class,
Yeah.
people doesn't know if they can or not.
Yep.
I can do that.
Okay, I'm actually gonna take a bathroom break. I should have done that a little bit earlier. Sorry about that. But if you guys need to get up, wiggle, go ahead and do so, because I need to. Okay, let's kick it off again. I'm just missing one person, and I think we're probably good to go. So is everyone who wants to be in the spreadsheet now in the spreadsheet? Okay. That's great. So as you can see, we are all clicking around, and if you hover over someone's name, you can see who that is editing a cell. Now, just because they're in a cell doesn't mean I can't put stuff in that cell. That just means that's the cell they have highlighted, right? So they're actively doing something in there, maybe they're away from the screen. That just lets you know where their cursor is essentially, or what cell they're in. But you can still do things within that cell. Right, so pretty cool there. Now, if you guys watch on your screens what I'm doing, you'll be able to see all this same information. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select my data again, and we're going to recreate that table. But then maybe one of you guys can go and try a table out. So just going to say total by rep. And instead of the formula, I want a chart. I want a column chart. And I want to insert the chart. So are all of you now seeing a chart on your spreadsheet? That's how quickly collaboration works. Now, someone else can literally go grab that chart and move it for all of us, right? So we're all working. Yep, someone just moved it. That wasn't me. Right? So we can all be in this document at the same time, doing whatever we need to collaborate. And someone can go create a new sheet. We can add sheets. You guys are always going to see those sheets. You can change things, update it. You will see it live as I'm doing it. Virtually no lag, right? So it's pretty robust. Just fair bit of warning. Collaboration is great, but collaboration maxes out at, in terms of functionality, you probably don't want more than 5 to 10 people editing actively in a document. Things can get messy. We start stepping on each other. There's too many cooks in the kitchen, right? So just because we can do it doesn't mean we always should do it. I find 2 to 3 people collaborating on the same document at the same time is phenomenal. Maybe a team watching things happen at the same time and you're on a meeting working together, that's phenomenal. But if you got 10 people all making active edits, it gets dicey quick. So just a word of caution, that can be tricky, right? So anyways, I'm going to move this over here, and then I want to talk about how we can actually make changes to this, right? So someone else has this highlighted, that's why it's in red, kind of around here. That's okay. I'm going to double click, and to the right of my screen opens up the chart setup. All right, so the chart's already been set up, but maybe I want to change some things. So I can come in, I can change the x-axis, the y-axis, I can change whatever I want there. I can switch the rows and columns. I don't like that at all. Doesn't really do much for us, but we can do what we want here. It's pretty logical, right? So we can, stack is actually not going to do anything for us here either. But we can change the date range, we can change the x-axis, we can aggregate it. We can, change the series, whatever we need to do there. Or we can change the chart type entirely. And then if we want to customize is going to be, what does it look like, right? So we're not actually editing the data when we're customizing, we're saying, what does it now need to look like? We're working on presentation, right? So now we're talking chart styles, themes, that sort of thing. Maybe we want it 3D. Ooh. Maximize it. Do whatever we need to, right? So, their chart border color got changed to red. So I'm gonna put that to none. No big deal. We can add a title. So chart title, top 5 reps by total. That's a fine title, but we can change that there. And then change the font as well. So whatever you want to do with that chart. The same goes for the series. You can change the fill color. So notice it says the fill color and it says auto, but it looks like it's white. That doesn't necessarily mean it's actually white. It could just be, when it's set to auto, it's just going to choose a color for you that it thinks looks nice. Google can be wrong about what looks nice, so feel free to change those things. So if you notice, it was blue before, even though the auto next to it was white. I don't like the red though. I'm going back to auto. Google was right. Line color, right? That's just the outline around our chart. Legend, we can say, hey, how is everything actually represented? Do we need a legend? Probably not for this, because we only have one series that we're looking at. But you can place it there.
Why does it have, why is it grabbing, I mean, it must be something in the data, but it's got Jardine twice, parent twice.
Oh, because I have this data just doubled.
So it's doing it by date, and so.
Yeah, so it's doing it by date. That's a great, yeah, I hadn't actually noticed that. So this formula must be grabbing it by date. So it's seeing parent twice, even though they're the exact same results essentially. And then, our vertical access and things like that. Right, so any changes that we need to make to what it looks like, we would do on the customize section. Then we can always get rid of it or do whatever we want. All right, so you can also right click on a chart and find all of those things basically from there. But if you click into it and you say, hey, the series total, it's going to open up on the right hand side. I'm just going to delete the chart. And let's do,
Are you gonna change it?
I put the red border on it.
oh, hey!
Like someone put a red border on it.
Yeah. Oh, no, that was more just it looks like someone's done it. No one's in trouble. Questions with charts? Do we want to make more charts? Do one of you guys want to make a chart? No, we don't want to make charts. What kind of charts do we use a lot of charts, or do we generally keep our data in tables?
Yeah, we don't really do charts.
No, don't really do charts. That's fine.
I'm half tempted to do an expense report on pencils and binders and everything, but,
Yeah, I would recommend you don't do that. That sounds really hard.
it doesn't actually sound hard.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you said paper and pencil. No, okay, yeah. If you're using sheets, you're good. That's my mistake.
Paper and piece.
Yeah, no, I as soon as I realized what data we have in here, I caught up to the rest of the group.
Very good. I'm glad you're on board.
I'm here with you guys now. Thanks for waiting. All right, so, no more questions with charts? Anything we want to see there? We have a general concept. It's great. Let's talk about macros. Is anyone familiar with macros? What they do in Excel? Okay.
I'm not sure though that anyone would use a macro here.
So macros in Sheets are a little bit different. They're not quite as capable. They are more user-friendly, right? So I think using macros and sheets makes a lot more sense for our average users than using macros in Excel does. However, if you were using macros in Excel, that's one of those things where your life has changed, and we can talk about that. But it turns, you become not a full-blown computer programmer. You can do a lot more, actually, but if you're familiar with like VBA in Excel, it's a very similar process to that instead of the actual macro recording functionality. So, I want to record a macro for you guys really quickly because I want to record a macro for you guys really quickly because everything we've done so far, 90% of it, we can automate for ourselves. Right? So we can dump data in and let it change whatever we want it to. Whatever we want it to. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm just going to make some of this formatting weird right now, just so that we can kind of see some of the changes. Okay, so I'm just going through randomly. This means nothing to you right now, but hopefully it means something. Okay, so I've italicized this, I've bolded this, I've changed the format here. I made this generally unusable. Let's imagine this is just a big data doc, right? Someone has put data in here for us, and we want to change it to a certain formatting by default. That's when a macro comes in handy, and we can record those steps for the system. So I'm going to come to Tools, and if you see macros, right? So I'm going to record a macro, and there's use absolute reference or use relative reference. Absolute means no matter what, edit these same cells that I'm editing now and changing the formatting. Whereas absolute says, hey, actually if I start on column B, do column B over, so that it's the same amount of space, but starting at a different spot. I would imagine 90% of the time absolute reference is what you're going to want to do. But recording these macros is super duper easy. So I've hit record macros and it is now recording. And what it's going to do is every action I take, it's going to write a little script for that. And you're not going to see the script, but that's what it's doing on the back end. So I'm going to say, hey, column A, that needs to be a date format. So I'm going to come here, and then I'm going to set it to date. All right, now column A is all set to date. All of column A is set to date. I'm going to say, hey, this doesn't need to be italicized or bolded. I just want it nothing fancy there. So it's going to go through that process. Let's see, I'm going to,
Row one.
what did I do to row one?
Row one, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Thank you. So I'm going to, let's make this all bold. Let's go fancy. Let's put a border around it.
Yes.
Really lift it up.
We need help.
All right, so I've taken a few steps here.
Italicized was the thing change.
Mm-hmm.
This is all italicized. Okay. So notice that brings up a good point. Only one row is italicized. So is it going to go in and say, hey, unitalicize and reitalicize and do all those steps? No, it's looking at our final setting that we have that, right? So if you go all out of order like I just did and make a mess of the recording, no big deal. Google knows what you want in the end, not the clumsiness that we may have taken to get there. So we can do, right, like I can apply all sorts of things. Keep in mind, each macro can store up to 10 changes, right? So like, changing, alternating colors for the whole sheet, that would be one change. Changing the bold of column 1, that's gonna be another change. We can have up to 10 macros on the sheet, so if we have, let's say, 11 changes that we need to do, we would have one macro with potentially 10 changes, and we would bring a second macro for remaining one. Right, so that's how we can do it. That's one of the limitations. But I'm just gonna hit save. Right, like I like what this is done. And then I'm gonna say, all right, we're gonna save a new macro. So what does this mean? We'll just do. That's rough, right? All right, and then if you notice, it gives us a shortcut option. So you can put a number in here. So if I hit Control Option Shift and 1, if you can hit 4 keys at the same time, you can save 2 clicks. I don't generally do that. But there we go. So I've saved that macro.
4 keys at the same time.
And then if I come back up to macros and I select first try, macros are scripts that have been written on behalf of you. So any script that we have needs to be authenticated. So I'm going to hit first try, and it's going to say, hey, authorization required. Right? It'll only ask you this once, but we need to authorize this script for this sheet. So I'm going to say, yeah, sure, why not? I'm going to allow this, right, because this is record macro, something that I recorded, I trust it. I'm very trustable. All right, so notice it, well, actually that's not a great example because I'll need to come in and change some of this. Let me go grab data from over here. Okay, so this data is totally different than our other data, right? The formatting's different. It'll give us the idea. So I'm just going to copy and paste that. I'm going to come right in here. Alright, so I've changed the data. I'm going to come into the tools again. My internet's being a little slow here.
Yep, changed.
Alright, tools, macro, first try. It's now running the script. Script finished. Oh, and it kept my conditional, or not conditional, the alternating colors. So what it did do though is it's going to verify all of this. Let's see, does that even have a border? No, it doesn't. I'm going to call that a failed script.
Actually, I think it does have the border. The border's on the whole row though.
No, yeah. So I put a border on a whole row, which is very good looking. I would recommend that in all your spreadsheets. I mean, it did set this to date, set these things as we wanted. It kept our,
If you changed it and then ran the macro again,
yeah, so if I go,
you change it to whatever.
let's just do plain text. Let's do, colors. Name.
It's just kind of, it's really easy.
I have no idea why it's holding on to my alternating colors here.
It just shows.
Sorry, I'm,
It's page seven, what you do is change your data. It's nothing, it's not your data.
face values in here this time. face right now. Actually, gonna hop into my old spreadsheet, because this one was not giving me the same problems. And recorded as similar. So I'm gonna change this formatting really quick. Sorry to get hung up on this. So that's number. Let's just get rid of bolding here. And then, so I've changed it, this has run a previous macro. I'm gonna come into tools, macros, I'm gonna do. I think this macro I'm gonna run. Gonna run it. And then in this particular macro, I actually chose to apply alternating colors. So I'm not entirely sure what's happening with this spreadsheet. To be honest, I'll probably just close it out and reopen it and see if I can. See if I can get things started again. But yeah, I mean, macros are pretty cool ways to apply formatting. So if we've got data that comes in weekly, right, maybe we've got, you're the accounting department, and you get an AR report every week. And it just comes in a huge data dump, and then you put it in a spreadsheet, and you got formulas that work off that. Macros are gonna make it really simple to say, hey, all right, dump my data here, make it pretty, so it's readable, you can group it, you can do whatever you need that way. And then you can still have formulas there ready to actually do what you want with the data. You can have empty charts sitting, waiting in like a template format, so that as soon as you dump the data, boom, everything fills out, and you've got an entire spreadsheet document that is ready for you without having to do new work all the time. So I went off on a little bit of a tangent there. Hopefully I didn't lose you all. Sorry about that, but questions, concerns? Does anyone think they would use a macro? That's fine if it's a no. I won't even show it to the next group if it's a no.
If they understood it, they might. I mean, us in general, I should say.
Yeah,
And I just don't think most people understand macros and pivot tables, and it's just.
no, macro, I think pivot tables are
Very
very
useful.
difficult. I think macros are difficult as well. I think pivot tables are harder than macros personally. If I could say anything about macros, I would say go give it a try, just on your own. Do something really simple. Do one task, right? Change one cell to bold, and then try to add on to that. So you can see how it really quickly becomes a pretty cool tool, where you can really start to enable it. There's not a simple way to do a pivot table without really being in the weeds right off the bat. Macros let us take incremental steps towards actually completing what we want. Okay, how many of us have needed to link one Google Sheet to another Google Sheet? And I mean like another entire workbook, right? So you'll notice this sheet is entirely separate from this sheet. They
I
are not-
would think Mary would have sheets that are, calculations are based on other worksheets. I know Thomas had that. I know when I was in accounting, I did that quite regularly. You'd have multiple worksheets, and you might have a nice output that you want that's based on calculations of two other sheets. I don't know if you're currently doing that or not, but.
You use that? So are you actively using Excel right now? Or, okay, and do you continue to use Excel?
They do until their computer gets replaced. and then they will not have it
So,
installed.
so when is your computer gonna die? You got it, never, all right, don't even worry. No, your excuse.
There are a small handful of exceptions to that rule based on other entities that they work with, based on them getting Keith's permission.
Okay, well, I'm not gonna spend too much time on this, but I do want it to be known that you can connect these spreadsheets together. And it's pretty simple, so I'm just gonna show you this really quick. It's called the import range function. I already have it written out, but we can do one together really quickly. Import range says, hey, I'm in this spreadsheet, but I wanna grab data from another spreadsheet, like another workbook entirely. So because Google is based in the cloud, everything they do is in the cloud, there's actually a URL or a website that we can go to for each one of these spreadsheets. So what we're doing here, I'm gonna talk through this formula really quickly, is I'm grabbing the website that our spreadsheet is hosted on, and then I'm saying a particular sheet within, like, so a particular tab within that sheet, and then I'm specifying the data that I want to grab. Right, so very complicated from a high level. If we dive in a little bit deeper, it'll be easier. So I am going to come over here, and I'm going to say, let's just scroll down a little bit. I'm going to say equal signs, import range. And if you hit tab at any point in time, you notice, so, like I got multiple here, multiple formulas, I can down arrow, and then I can hit tab, and it finishes that for me. Alright, so a little quick and easy thing for you. Alright, so spreadsheet URL. What I'm gonna begin with is parentheses. Okay, because all that URL needs to be encompassed within these parentheses, right? Like many of our formulas, anytime there's text inside of an Excel formula, they need to have brackets around it. Same thing. So now what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to go grab the URL. And there are two ways to do this. Notice you can grab the entire URL, or you can grab everything after the \D. So I'll show you what that actually means. I've come over to the new spreadsheet. I actually want to grab, let's see if there's some fun data somewhere for us. Surely I've got fun data. Okay, let's do that. So I want to grab this data. My URL doesn't change as I move around in these different sheets. It's all hosted on the same spot, so you don't have to worry about that quite yet. But I'm actually going to come grab this. And I'm going to copy and paste it. So I'm going to copy that entire URL from the top of the browser. And I'm going to paste it right in here. Okay? And then I'm going to say, comma, brackets again, and I'm going to actually point it to where I want to grab that information from. So if I remember correctly, we're oops. I'm going to copy this. That's going to be easier in my mind. So that is the tab that it's found on. And now I need to follow exactly what they're doing, right? So here's my tab, and their example is World Cup, and my example is VLOOKUP index, match. Then I put an exclamation mark, that denotes the change, and now I'm going to say, where's that data? So for me, that data is I want to, let's call it 013. So I'm going to say I1 through 014. we need to allow access, so we need to actually connect these sheets. I'm gonna hit allow access. And it's pulled that data in. So, that data will stay here, and you can always see that import range. But notice if I come to an entirely new spreadsheet, let's say I delete half this data, it's gone here. We've now got a hole in our data. So those will always stay connected, whether you have them open or not, right? Like I know in Excel, oftentimes we have to have them either open or closed to do certain tasks, right? Maybe if we're sharing it out, we have to have it closed, but if we're connecting them, they have to both be open. We don't have to have those concerns when we're working in Sheets. So if we can have it open or not, it'll be up to date with the data. Anyone gonna find any value in that? Okay, that's all right.
Probably at some point.
It's a good tool. It can make Excel a lot bigger, and it can make data aggregation a lot more simple. So a lot of times departments will each have their own, let's call it master list, and then you want a company-wide master list. This is a great way to aggregate data without having to have one ginormous spreadsheet. We can just grab data samples from everywhere. I've gone through the majority of things that I wanted to discuss.
How is that different than VLOOKUP?
How is that different than VLOOKUP? Yeah, so a VLOOKUP is,
What is a VLOOKUP? Yeah.
I'll talk through a VLOOKUP. So a VLOOKUP is a vertical lookup, is what that means. So what it is it's searching vertically, it's searching here, and finding, so if it finds Jones, I can tell it to retrieve a certain column. Alright, so I'll give you an example of that. It's really hard to understand just from the base of it. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to say enter the lookup, and I'm going to say my search key. We need to set one search key, right? So we need it to equal something. This is going to be a bad data set too because there's tons of.
Just do east.
So we're just going to do east. Okay, and then I'm going to search a really small range because I don't want too many things to show up.
But at least get 2 or 3 E's, right? E's.
Actually, we'll just take the whole range, that's fine. So I'm going to select everything here. Notice I started my data range in column B where east is. That's very important. You can't have a VLOOKUP where your index, the thing you're searching for, is not at the very far left of your data range. Won't work, right? Because it uses indexing.
In other words, if you grabbed the date, but
If
you're
I,
looking up east, it wouldn't work.
if I grab the date, but I'm looking for east, it will not work. Because it ruins the indexing, which I'll explain in this next step, right? So I grab my data, and now I say the index. So the index is basically what column is it in? Over, right? So what data, anytime I see east, where do I want to go from? And this isn't actually searching for east, this is searching for whatever's found in here. So right now we're searching B9, so it's looking for east, but when it finds east, we can return any one of these columns. So column 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Right, because we've got 5 that follow after. So I'm going to say, done, my index is going to be, let's do index 4. And this one I just generally set as false. I would say 9 times out of 10 your data is not sorted. So what did we do there? We said B9, search for B9, B through G, column 4. What did we return? 95. shouldn't be adding those together though, it should just be.
I'm having trouble finding out what data you're actually trying to pull, like, I get east, but I'm not,
So
what are you trying to figure out?
if basically I'm using column B as a reference. So east,
Okay,
but in this situation, B2 has east. But as I pull the formula down, right, we're familiar with pulling our formulas down, it's going to reference a new spot, right? So unless we set absolute references, it's gonna start referencing, hey, B3 has central. So I want central, and I wanna pull this information.
I think column B is your one though. Instead of 0.
I think you're right about
the
that.
range. So that's probably where the 95 came in.
I think you're
It only pulled the first one, if that's the case.
Yeah, that's interesting. So I'm just gonna say, here you go. So I said 4 last time. Yeah, so
Do 5 and see.
5 should be 199. So essentially what VLOOKUP does is it references your column and pulls another bit of data within that same column or the same row, right? So there's also horizontal lookups. VLOOKUPs are really, they're pretty great. The difference between a VLOOKUP though and an import range is an import range you don't have to set the index, and you can't, so like, let's say we have multiple VLOOKUPs in a row to pull column, index 5, 4, and 3. Maybe we don't want to pull, maybe we want to pull index 2, not index 3, but index 4. If we're importing a range, we wouldn't have a way to import that whole range without doing 2 separate instances. And it's going to pull everything that we have in there and keep it up to date. If we're doing a VLOOKUP, we also have to do 2 separate scenarios, but the VLOOKUP is only going to work within a single spreadsheet. So if we want to tie multiple together, you could do a VLOOKUP with a nested input range function, right? It's pretty complicated. You probably just want to do import your data and then do a VLOOKUp off of that. If that makes more sense. Depending, I mean, you can definitely do the nested and it's not wildly difficult, but it does make your formulas quite large. So yeah, they function similarly, but you can go horizontally more easily when you're doing an import range, because you can import lots and lots of data instead of having to do multiple formulas. Okay, we got off on a tangent there again, that's my mistake. What other interests do we have?
I do a lot of comparisons, so this just seems like it's just gonna complicate it. Where I can't pull in,
A lot of comparisons and,
yeah, taking from one spreadsheet, putting it in next to the data and.
well, so, but I mean, you don't have to use a VLOOKUP in that situation, right? Like, we can just do that import range.
You can't just copy data and paste it.
Oh, you can certainly copy and paste it, right? Like, I can come in here, I can copy this. Hit Control C, and then I can come put it over here.
You can't put it in the same data, you can't put it in the same spreadsheet.
You can't put it in the same spreadsheet. The only difference is it's not gonna stay up to date, right? So in this situation, I actually needed to copy and paste values only.
See the right here. They might
Paste,
have the right.
values only.
It's disgusting. But he had a power. Great. Because he's getting proposed. Yeah. Me too. She's kind of cute. She is.
Showing us a copy of this. I'm not sure if it's from the computer.
I know.
I click copy.
So many people tell me how much she loves me. And her clients. Oh, your biggest mom, she loves you so much.
So I'm not entirely sure what's causing my issue right now. I've never had a copy and paste dilemma. But we can copy and paste across spreadsheets and share it. The reason you want to do an upload range is because it keeps that data up to date. So if it changes in one spreadsheet, it'll always be up to date on your spreadsheet. But that might not be good use, right? Like, it might be better to just copy and paste it across in that situation. Shouldn't cause you problems.
Don't start.
Okay.
I probably. I don't know. Oh, I know. Everything they went through gets through my power.
Not just letting me paste values for some reason. So Google might have an issue right now because it'll let me paste, but it's obviously using referencing that no longer exists. So I'll see what's going on there. Because I've never had a problem where it doesn't just let you paste the values. I'll follow it if it's there. But we can copy and paste across spreadsheets without a problem. It's just if we need live data, then we want to do an input range. And if you need to pull, you do a VLOOKUP. You do a combination of a nested or just import the range and do a VLOOKUp off that.
I think the key, Mary, is automation. Because if you're just looking at, if you have a data set that's constantly changing behind the scenes and you just want to copy that data set and put it in,
Yeah, I don't,
If
I'm
you-
not worried about what's
if you-
changing behind the scenes, I just wanna compare.
but if you take that data set and throw it into a spreadsheet, you've got all the formulas already grabbing the columns and stuff. You don't have to redo that, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Like you wouldn't have to filter it, you wouldn't have to dig through it, it would kick out. So it's automation thing. Meaning it's, if you've got a data set that looks the same, just numbers change, and you just wanna, you don't wanna have to rerun all your spreadsheet and comparisons.
Yeah, see
every
which
time.
ones changed. You know, numbers, you know, I might have 205, I have 250, so I need to know what, you know, what that extra 45 is.
Yeah, so in that use case, and we can probably talk afterwards too, but
Across,
yeah, we can do a compare across. That's gonna be more difficult than if we, say, use a formula that assigns, like a number to each value, and then we can compare those across to each other, and it'll automatically do it for you.
yeah, that's kind of.
Makes sense.
Okay, well, other questions? Have I been helpful at all? Have I just confused everyone? You can tell me, you guys are the batch where they were willing to, like, get confused. The important people come in the afternoon, so if I get something wrong, you guys need to let me know.
I think it, came down to, you know, your VLOOKUP thing, useful tools, but, a little bit more complicated. But I think that it's great so far, but, you know, some things are just a little bit more advanced than necessary at this time.
Yeah, and I don't want to, hopefully we're not getting too into the weeds. We don't have to look at any more formulas. And if you guys are comfortable, I'm comfortable, but if you have other questions, if you want to stay afterwards, and maybe we do have a more advanced question, let's take the time, but if you guys feel comfortable, just know that if you learn one thing from today, know that just go ask Google in this Explore section. Just go ask Google. Say, this is the data I want, and I want it averaged, or I want it summed. Just go ask, and there's a really good chance Google can write a formula for you and save you time. And maybe write a more advanced formula that would take you 20 minutes. Maybe you can just type it in and Google's got it done. That's the biggest takeaway. It's really robust. And other than that, I hope you've learned some good formatting tips and tricks. And
I like it.
from there.
We're good.
Did anyone want to cover Google Docs at all?
We have some questions, but
Questions?
they're very particular to our office, so I don't know if you want everybody to sit on it, in on it, or.
Yeah, I think we could probably deal with those after, because we've definitely got time. But if the group wants to hear, you know,
Has to do with scanning documents from Tyler and commission videos, so.
anyone interested in scanning documents? All right, we'll deal with it after.
We thought so.
I think scanning documents would be like a shared document type deal anyway, but.
Yeah, I mean, depends on how it's set up, but absolutely, could be that situation, so. Awesome, well, let's see, I think Nate sent out a form earlier, we'll probably send out another form saying, hey, what did you like, what did you dislike? If you let me know, that's great. If there are things I missed, let me know, and I can get you guys the appropriate resources. Sheets should be a tool that you feel enabled to use. I think the barrier to entry is a little bit lower than Excel. I understand Excel is what we're used to, it's what we've been using. But Sheets can do a lot with minimal effort compared to Excel, which probably took us years to master because it can be a difficult program. I think Sheets is slightly easier for a lot of the things we do on a regular basis. Awesome.
I don't
Well,
think
thank
he
you so
sent-
much for coming.
He hasn't sent the email out yet.
The follow-up, we'll
Yeah.
get it.
Is that more of a tomorrow deal?
Yeah, tomorrow,
Okay.
whenever I get around to reminding them.
That works.
Once you don't hate the side of my face, then we'll send it out. Before then, it's a dangerous game. Awesome. Well, I'll let you guys go. If you have questions, I'm gonna be here, stick around, so I'm going to the back corner first. Then after that, you guys, this is the question. Let's go over it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.